It's Lynn, your adult coach. Today's concern comes from Maria Torres, a new member at the Art of Adulting. Her son is, she just set life goals, his studies. He spends too much time on computer games. She's worried that he's not eating. And from time to time, he has some aggressive outbursts when we try to limit his game time. These seem to be common concerns among those of us who have autistic young adults. And I'd like to see if I can't tackle those with for Maria and give her some good suggestions for today. First, we want to understand what's happening. We're following Barb Avila's process from her book, Seeing Autism. We've been to a lot of doctors, therapists, nurses, autism experts, speech pathologists, social skills teachers. Just a ton of people have helped us in our efforts to help our autistic young adults. And I want to borrow a phrase from a song that here we have on the Muppets. We have, oh gosh, I lost his name. Anyway, that wonderful country singer who's passed, singing David Pomerantz' song, It's in Every One of Us. And I just want to, oh, John Denver? Is that, I think that's John Denver. Anyway, the song starts with the lyrics, it's in every one of us to be wise. Find our heart, open up both our eyes. We can know everything without ever knowing why. It's in every one of us to be wise. So I just want to suggest to you, Maria, that you probably have some really good ideas about what you can do and to help, your autistic young adult. And what I want to do for you is to give you a pathway to organize all of those ideas. And so we're going to start with keeping the end in mind. What we really want to do is to help our autistic young adults practice the set of mental tools that help them manage their thoughts, emotions, and actions so that they can achieve goals that they set for themselves that are for them. And keeping in mind, of course, that what we're trying to do is help our autistic young adults on this journey from independence, being dependent on us, which was pretty much the way they were for the first 18 years of their life, when they were dependent on us and the schools to structure their lives, create expectations, and scaffold the types of supports that they needed to achieve the results that they created in order to graduate. Now they're moving to in more of an independent state where they define what they want and what they're going to do to achieve it on their way to the final stage, which is the interdependent stage. And that's when we are helping each other out. That's where we achieve our greatest accomplishments, when we're doing things not only for ourselves, but also for all of us. And so this is the end in mind that I want us all to keep in mind. And it's not that our autistic young adults haven't made incredible progress along these, with their skills. It's just that they're probably lagging their peers. And that's the last time I want to talk about that, because comparing where our kids are to where a non-autistic kid might be is just can be an exercise in frustration. So just, but we've noticed that maybe they're going to take a little bit longer on this journey than someone that doesn't have an autistic brain. And that makes sense, because from the beginning, having an autistic brain has made them more anxious. And when we're really anxious, at least most of the autistic people that I love have a degree higher of anxiety. And so it impacts their ability to pick up on things as they go along, because we certainly do not learn well when we're in an anxious state. So it makes sense that there's been a cascading effect on their learning, that they haven't been able to, pick up on stuff as quickly as somebody with a non-anxious or non-autistic brain. So let's connect with ourselves first and look at, what how has that, what kind of an impact has that had on us? I feel like I spent most of my time for the first 18 years really focusing on just supporting them getting through school. And I never really stopped to consider the impact that having an autistic young adult had on me. Because I did have, some great supports around me, some great teachers and counselors and social skills teachers and those types of people around me. But now that they've graduated from those high school types of supports, I find that it's not as easy to find the appropriate support, not only for them, but also for me as they learn how to do things more independently. So we really need to connect with ourselves and make sure that we know where we are, what's happening with our own thoughts, emotions, and actions, so that we align those with who we really want to be at our core. What is the thing? What are the values? How do we want to show up as the parent of an autistic young adult? So I suggest that, when we connect with ourselves, that we slow things down, that we record and sort our thinking, and that we really take the time to practice some self compassion, because we're just on a different path than many of our peers. And our path is going to be, probably is going to mean that our autistic young adult is going to be in our home longer than what our peers are experiencing. They may go off to school, they may come back from school. There's more experimentation and regrouping, I find, with my autistic young adults than has happened with my peers. And I just want to, be compassionate with myself to know that sometimes I do compare and despair, and that's perfectly okay. Um, it's not the best thing in terms of trying to get the energy that I want, but at the same time, I just want to acknowledge that I'm human, and I'd really like for them to be, more capable of solving their own problems and finding their own resources, but they're just not there yet. And that's the word I keep reminding myself, is that they're not there yet. So I recommend highly that we sort out our thoughts using the steer map, because any given situation is outside of our control. We have an autistic young adult and they have that kind of a brain, and that's not in our control. But the results of that, of them being autistic, do trigger some thoughts that produce emotions that generate actions on our behalf, and they cause results. And the results always tie back to the thought that we're having. And so when we take any given situation and really sort it out into those 5 categories, we can really notice what our thoughts are creating. And here's the reason why we not only want to notice that for ourselves, but we also want to help encourage our autistic young adults to practice this exercise of sorting out their thinking, because so often that we're not even aware of those thoughts. I mean, the research suggests we have between 60 and 70,000 thoughts a day. 99% of them are just fine. They're automatic. They're helping us get through the day. On occasion, though, there's like a 1% of our thinking that is creating a result that really isn't really well aligned with who we are at our essence. And so grabbing a hold of some of those thoughts and realizing what they create helps us take responsibility for the results that we're that we're making happen in our life. And we want to do the same thing. We want to encourage our young adults to do the same thing. That's where they move from being a child to being an adult, is when they take responsibility for their thoughts, emotions, and actions that create the results based on the situation that's outside of their control. So if we get them to intentionally think about their thoughts, emotions, and actions, their TEA, their tea, how they're brewing their tea is going to be what is going to create the results in their life. So let's just start with our own thinking. We have our autistic young adult. He's not adulting yet. And my favorite thought is, and that's okay. I love tagging that thought onto any thought that I have, because it helps me get slow and lower my energy and loving. it's okay that they are just where they are. It helps me accept the situation that I cannot control and then have the courage to figure out what my thoughts, emotions, and actions are, and the wisdom to separate what I can't control from what I can control. So, one of the best ways to connect is to use this reflective listening technique. And if we can take the time to really connect by listening to them, it will help them feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure in our presence, which will hopefully help them feel the same way over time in the greater community. So we want to reflect to them, it sounds like, and if I hear you saying, and if I'm following you, or help me understand, or I think I'm seeing, um, just an opening that shows that we're not sure what's going on in their minds and we'd like to know more. And the second part is the emotion. You feel reluctant, afraid, ashamed, lonely, whatever it is that you can, uncomfortable. That's my favorite go-to is it's either they're comfortable or they're uncomfortable, and you can't miss on that one. Usually you can tell if they're comfortable or uncomfortable. Easy. And we want to teach our autistic young adults this one too. So the uncomfortable part versus comfortable makes those emotions that are sometimes hard to peg with words very accessible to our autistic young adults. And because you're not getting what you want, a simple paraphrase of what we've been hearing from them as they've been talking. And this is where we do connect. And at the same time, we want to recognize that this is going to be a skill that's going to be developed over time, because our kids do well if they can. This is Ross Green. He's just fantastic with helping us, um, be respectful of what our children are struggling with, and trying and the steps we need to take to help them understand what that we really are on their side, and what we would really like to consider some of their ideas when we figure out what we want to do next. So he suggests that we start a list. And this is what I'd suggest, Maria, is that we start a list of, you started it already when you wrote down the concerns that you have. Let's get that list flushed out as much as we can, and with as much detail as we can. Like last week, I asked you to clean the bathroom and you never did it, or the day before yesterday, the sink was full of dirty dishes. Whatever it is that you're noticing, let's start the list of the lagging, of the unsolved problems. And when there's an unsolved problem, Russ Green reminds us that there's always a lagging skill that we need to help them build, keeping in mind that we really need to focus on the gain. If we look at our autistic young adults, they have made considerable progress since, when they started school. And we need to make sure that we remind ourselves that there always going to be a gap between the ideal and where we are. And if we focus only on that gap, we're going to get disheartened. So we have to remind ourselves too of the gain. And that's why when we make that list of lagging, unsolved problems and lagging skills, that we take the time to acknowledge how far we've come in each of the areas in which our young adults currently are struggling. One of my favorite ways to get an idea a little bit more about what it is that they would like to create in their lives, because that's where we get the most leverage, is when they're doing something that they want, is if we, instead of just saying, now, what do you want in your life? You know that they're going to say, I don't know. But if we interview them using those three broad categories of energy, work, and love. So in the energy category, it's how much money do you want to make? What kind of food do you want to eat? What kind of movement do you want to do? How do you want to manage your mind going forward? Work would be, what kind of service do you see yourself providing? What are you interested in? What jobs that you've noticed around, as we've been experiencing different places in our community, what kinds of jobs look interesting to you? And then finally, the third category of love. What do you love to learn? I know you love to play video games and you love to hit all the various levels and do them online with friends. They're designed to keep you there because they truly do provide you with the dopamine hits that give you pleasure. And I get that. And I want to see if we can't figure out a way for you to love more parts of your life other than just the part where you're doing this gaming, or YouTubing or whatever it is that our autistic young adults do to pretty much escape what's happening in their life, what they're feeling right now. I mean, they can dive into those video games for hours on end, getting the dopamine hits that keep them in that game. And the people that created those games understand that that's what's keeping them there too. So they're designed for that. And we have to recognize that when we want to interrupt them, that we're asking them to step away from something that's giving them pleasure. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't set some of those boundaries and some of those limits. Or I like to think of it as sort of backfilling their life so that if they can find something that they really do enjoy doing, they're willing to give up the time on the game because they really want to go to work. In my daughter's case, she just got a job working at doggy daycare. So she's surrounded by dogs all day long. Um, you know, that's really pretty much starting to fill up her week. So it really minimizes the amount of time that she spends sedentary watching YouTube videos. So it's starting to work this way, where they drive the engine of their life. They start steering their life where toward the GPS that they have selected. And of course, I'm going to advocate again raw screens. Practice proactive and collaborative problem solving together, because this way we first ask, we agree on the situation, we ask them what's their steer map so that they tell us how they are thinking, feeling, and acting at this time, creating what results. That's the empathy step. That's where we really have to practice our own reflective listening and really understand, what are the thoughts that are occurring to them now. Then here's my steer map. As the parents, we also want to be prepared to present our point of view in a succinct, short, slow, low way so that they feel the love that we have, that we really have their best interest at heart. In fact, we know that in their lifetime, no one is going to have their best interests at heart as much as we do. So we want to present to them our perspective, what works for us as well, so that together we can agree on what steps to take next. What kinds of experiments are we willing to take in our lives as we figure out what works for them and for us to create a life that they love. So the roadmap is what I present inside the Art of Adulting, and we go through each one of these steps, creating a life GPS worksheet for ourselves and for our autistic young adults to guide them for the rest of their lives in achieving what it is that they want. So we figure out who it is that they are at their best so that we understand that we can make progress and feel peace the whole way. We don't have to wait until we've achieved a certain goal in order to feel good. Then we figure out what's the mindset, the best mindset that we need to train our brain to work harder for us so that we can get what we want out of life and commit to those actions. Then self assess. This is them assessing themselves on how well they have achieved the goals, the actions that they agreed that they wanted to do in order to create incremental, predictable progress at their own pace. And then garnering the help of people that we know are going to be so helpful to getting the goals achieved, because we know that we can't do all this all by ourselves. And this is when we listen first to understand, then we proactively partner to be understood and solve problems together, both at home, and you're teaching them such a valuable skill that they will use in the workplace. So please watch my free masterclass. It's at lindsdavidson.com/welcome. Just click on any one of the buttons and you'll be able to hear the full process that I will take you through in the art of adulting that will give you a framework, a roadmap to follow, and that will you can give to your autistic young adult as well to follow to create the life that you all love that works. Bye for now.